If we are consciousness, the energy of life, then a logical question arises. Why do we get tired then? Why do we sleep? Let's analyze this question based on the previous video. There we said that consciousness, like a small child, plays whatever it imagines. Whatever game it chooses, it creates. And since it is a child, it cannot play the same thing for a long time. It gets bored, uninterested, and it stops gushing with its energy. It wants to sleep. You've probably noticed that when you have some task ahead of you, but it's uninteresting, boring, then you immediately feel tired. You have no strength. You want to sleep. And vice versa, if some brilliant idea comes, then you immediately jump up and start acting. And you don't remember your tiredness, even if it was there, because inspiration appears and with it strength. So, when the consciousness gets tired of the game, it switches to another, more interesting one. Externally, it looks like we fall asleep and dream. Sleep is the next game of consciousness. It works exactly like teleportation. In one reality, you close your eyes and open them in another. Once I dreamed that I was a sparrow. I was flying and already knew that some bird had misbehaved, and everyone was flying to a certain place to scold it, including me. When I flew up, I saw that it was someone's territory behind a fence, and for some reason, inside of me, I felt that it was probably not good to enter someone else's territory. And then I remembered, I'm a bird. I can do anything. I flew up, and there was already a flock of birds there. Everyone was making noise, swearing at one. The dream was very clear. I still remember my feelings. Birds have a collective consciousness. If one finds out something, then the others know everything too. They live as a single organism, so they can create different figures in flight without bumping into each other. Consciousness can create any form for itself. A bird, a fish, a bear, anything. All matter is simply forms of consciousness. This means that everything living and non-living has consciousness. I'll tell you one story. I had young trees growing in my country house. I tied a rope to them to dry laundry. There were no mature trees at that time. I used this rope and didn't think about them. Time passed, the trees grew older. Then I went to the sea for the whole summer. And one day, sitting on the shore, I suddenly remembered these trees. I was burned by the realization that the trees were growing. The trunk was getting thicker, and the rope was pulling it. And the trees were in pain. And then I realized that the trees were reminding me of themselves, so that I would free them, take off this rope. Otherwise, why would I think about these trees, because I never remembered them at all? I could not let go of this situation, because I felt their pain, but I could not help at that moment. When I returned, of course, I immediately took off this rope, and indeed, the trunks around the rope had already begun to deform. Then I realized that the thought that suddenly came to me about the trees was their cry for help. And I caught it then. Not only trees have consciousness, but also inanimate objects. Remember how we communicate with our cars. We call them affectionate words. And they too can be in a bad mood. They are capricious. We persuade them. They listen, help us. Sometimes you go on a trip, and there are no gas stations along a long stretch of the road. You look and the petrol is already close to zero, and you start to persuade the car. Come on, honey, come on, we'll make it. Be patient a little bit. And it never stalled. Now let's return to our conversation about why consciousness changes realities. It would seem that if consciousness gets tired of a boring game, and it jumps to another, more interesting one, then why does it return and wake up again in its body, in an uninteresting game? Consciousness knows itself not only in breadth, in different manifestations, but also in depth. It is interested in the process of development itself, the evolution of man. This game is interesting because each avatar has its own settings. And therefore, people manifest themselves differently in the same situations. Everyone has their own experience, their own path of development. People wander in the labyrinths of their beliefs, looking for answers to their questions, and gradually come out of limitations. They become free and begin to choose the experience they want to live in this life. Our goal is to reach the level of the Creator in this body, to throw off all limitations and become the master of your subconscious.